I had two fairly close matches in 23andMe.
Okay.
And one told me how to feel and said, just be glad you have a good family. My daughter used to work for 23andMe. We hear these stories all the time. And so he just basically was like, gave me the hand and made a presumption. And I did have a good family, but it was a very,
I just will say it's irrelevant.
right. And if your daughter worked for 23andMe, hello. So he shut me down, told me how to feel, mansplained me, did all the things. Then the gal who I am closest to, who I believe is a first cousin, closed the tree and said, we talked about this at the holidays. So she brought it up to everyone. And they determined that it must be the only one in the family who had never been married who was the one who was like 25 years older. And I was like, oh, how convenient. It must be him because nobody wanted to be their dad.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah.
I mean, that kind of, I had some feelings. And then they closed the tree. So,
That's why you always have to take screenshots, everyone. When you go on and find somebody's tree, because you never know when the tree's going to be closed. That's something else that people don't really think that much about. I'll use my genetic father. I mean, he was a well-respected person in the community, and I am the product of an affair. And so that shifts how people see my dad. I don't know if I told you this, but my family told me I was tainting his reputation, and I shouldn't talk about it. I shouldn't tell people that I exist because I'm ruining his reputation. And I'm just like, oh, he did that himself. We're innocent bystanders. That's their problem, not our problem. We just want to know who we are.
and to your point, I think my sisters and I are very concerned about my mom being portrayed in a different light. Very concerned. I'm very protective of my little mama. And I too don't want her any suspicions or any. And that is, I know, the thing that really held me back, that in the fear of having every door closed and having finality of never knowing. It was those two big things. I've been able to express that our brains and our hearts are not binary. It is not either or. It is not, I love my mom, therefore, just like it wasn't, I had a different father, therefore she didn't love me. That would be binary. And two things can be true, and we can have complex emotions, which is the complexity of human emotion and how confusing that can be, and how we often want to say that something is one thing, and when it's multiple things, we look at people like, well, make up your mind. Well, feelings don't settle on one feeling. They're complex and they have many, many layers. And so, yeah, I too don't want to portray my mom in any unfavorable light. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was an assault. I don't know what really happened. I make up stories because I know where she was in her marital situation and how hurt she was. And so I look at good stories about what might have happened, like perhaps she was finding herself after so many betrayals and in her own marriage, where she was thinking, well, it is time for me to go explore myself and build relationships with other men. I don't know.
It's sometimes I think hard for people too. I mean, I know we're all older. I mean, I'm 52. To think of your mom in that way, like our moms are women and they have their lives. And it sounds like she had a troubled marriage towards around the time you were conceived. I think we all just have this so much more grace or generosity with our moms because they're human too, right? And so they're having those experiences and they deserve that consideration just as much. Maybe she is exploring herself. Maybe she is trying to make a different situation. And I think sometimes it's really hard being the child. I know like I said, I'm 50s, but seeing our parents in that light, I think sometimes it's really hard for people to do that.
I think it's okay that she would, and I think that was the fear was, I know the story of their relationship and maybe his impact on it. And I don't want to switch the narrative and have it be, oh, because generally, as a rule, women and sexuality can come across very differently than men exploring their sexuality, and women
Mhm.
can be held to a different set of standards, which I personally have a problem with. And so I say, if you're in a marriage where there have been those things going on and you choose then to act in accordance with something that might help you feel grounded in yourself as a woman, in your femininity, and you need to explore, I say yes and then yes. But the hard part is not knowing, was it an assault, was it this, was it that? And yes.
Well, hopefully, as you continue to, hopefully you're able to narrow and get some more answers.
And this family that it's narrowed down to were established business owners in the community. And I know what they owned and what the business was, and had already done some research on them way back when my daughter had looked it up, even before I was really believing it, if you will. I'm going back to where I grew up. I happen to be going back to see family. And the DNA angel happened to narrow it down to these two. And I am going to come with kits in hand and I'm going to show up at the door. I have decided that for me, I am better face to face. And it is so easy to shut someone down on a computer. Just, I've already been shut down. And I'm going to request testing, even though she doesn't think it's this particular family, it would narrow it down to the other one. So I am hoping that with a genuine, authentic, compassionate approach, I might be able to say, look, I just really want to know my history. And I would love the opportunity to know you if, in fact, you are part of my story and my history. And I would love to know more about my biological father, even if I was never a part of his life. And, I mean, no harm.
That's so brave of you to do that. We have to take those moments and seize them, I think. I have a little bit of regret because one of my cousins said, let's just go down and knock on the door of your half brother. And then you could at least meet him once because he was dying by the time I figured out that we were related. He was clear. And the one time we talked on the phone that they didn't want contact. And she said, I think it'll be different. We should go. And I was so nervous about it. And I regret that I didn't just go because you have to think about those things. What happened if tomorrow that person isn't here anymore and I lose that opportunity? I think we do have to seize them. I think it's so brave of you to go and knock on the door.
I haven't done it yet.
At the last Untangling Our Roots, there was an adoptee who left the conference and went and knocked on the door of his birth mom's house to introduce himself. And it did go well. I think in today's society, we spend so much time on our phones and our emails and texts and all these things, and we lose so much behind it that having a person there, I agree with you. I think it just brings the humanity back into the conversation. We're not looking for anything else except answers about who we are, our medical history, where we come from, what our roots are like, right? And I think people can understand that when you're talking to them face to face.
And also, I was thinking somebody had to have said something along the way. I'll give you an example. My mom passed from dementia. I could have said, there could have been suspicion, but she never knew. In other words, I knew that their marriage was a bit of a revolving door near the end. So I knew that my dad would come back and leave. That was what I had understood. So there could have been suspicion. DNA testing wasn't a thing back then. So my thought was maybe she just truly never knew. Well, then when we all knew, and my sisters and I had to face it, stories started being shared. And I was like, and then it was stories about my mom made a comment to one of my sisters. She was the matriarch of the family. She raised five girls. She was not a spicy person. She was strong, but she was not, didn't have a mean bone in her body. But when she got dementia, stuff came out. So at one point, I guess she had said to one of my sisters, she's got a different dad. She would get spicy with us. Whoever was taking care
No,
of her was the bad guy at the time because she did not want to be cared for. It
right.
means a loss of personal autonomy. So when the person would come and take over, usually the person who just left would get a bit of a verbal lashing from my mom about something they did wrong. My sister was told she has a different dad, and my sister said, I said, well, why didn't you think to tell me that? And she said, because mom had dementia, Angie. She said a lot of stuff. She goes, I just looked at her and said, she doesn't, mom. And they had a big argument about it. My mom got real frustrated. And then she told another sister that I had a different mom. And so she must have gotten confused, right? And because we know that my mom is my mom, but like she must have been trying to tell the story, but couldn't get the story out.
Does it make a difference for you if your mom knew or didn't
Yes.
know? How so? I'm curious because I struggle with this a little bit myself.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a very emphatic yes. This is where the complexity of emotions come in because she knew. That means she betrayed me. And I don't love her any less. In fact, I have more compassion, more grace that she had to go to her last days with probably the most difficult story of her life. How horrible would that be? But how horrible for me too. And so she knew if she had a shadow of a doubt, it might make sense to me that she didn't want to invite something in. It makes sense to me on every level. I mean, why would you want one kid who had to go to, Hanukkah while the other four got to celebrate Christmas together? You know what I mean? Like, why would you want that for your kid? You would feel like that kid would feel like an outlier their whole lives. How terrible for me, I'm sure, is what she thought.
Well, I think about this just in the stepchild realm, right? So we use the standard, the best practice, best interest of the child used to be, and I don't think I could even say fully used to be, because I think we're just shifting to give that child stability and that sense of belonging, like you're talking about, like I'm not going to someplace different. The new dad should adopt the child, right? So they have that idea of I love you. I'm not quite sure where we got the affirmation, the idea that that affirms to the child, hey, I have this piece of paper now, you're mine, I'm going to be here for you always. The term real parent gets bandied around a lot in our community. Who's the real parent? And I'm always like, the real parent is the one who's there for you. The real parent is the one who's tucking you in bed, kissing you, all the things, teaching you to ride a bike, helping you with your math homework. It doesn't matter about genetics. Children sense that commitment, right? But
Mhm.
by adopting the child and erasing their background and not disclosing it, you're erasing a part of that child's identity. And we sense that, like you said, I was slightly different. I was the most different in my family. And
Mhm.
we don't know why. And we internalize that. And then you have the whole medical issues problem and the fact, I mean, you're in health and wellness. We mimic our parents' habits or their health habits. Like dad has high cholesterol, so I'm going to make my habits like that. And we're doing it wrong. And that can have obviously impacts to us.
The BRCA
Yeah.
gene for women in Ashkenazi Jewish. I'm sure my mom never ever realized the health ramifications. Did one parent die of dementia or did two? Did one parent have heart disease or did two? I only know half my story. My sisters are like, oh, you're so lucky in a way. And I said, well,
We don't know yet.
because their dad died of Lewy body dementia and my mom died of dementia. And so they're like, we're double whammy, but you've got hope. And so I feel like everyone is so curious, but not from a place, and I'm not throwing my family under the bus. It's just everyone's so curious, but not from a place of how are you doing with this? And maybe they are, and they just aren't expressing it. It's more of we kind of want to know where you're at. Like, what are you going to go?
I'm actually kind of defending your mom because that best practice of like we want to provide the stability of a solid family, of like her feeling like she belongs. I think in the past and in the mental health field too, it was agreed that was the best thing for the child. Oh, if they look like the family, just pretend like they're part of it and they'll never know the difference. And the ideas that now I think is coming to light that the kids do know the difference. And oh yeah, there's all that medical stuff too. I'm hoping we're starting to see, I know we're seeing a shift. It's just slow for society and everything to catch up with how that happens.
I think the thing everyone needs to realize about secrets is the longer you hold a secret, the heavier the secret gets. It's like starting out with this small secret gift, and then the longer you hold it, it just gets heavier and bigger because you keep putting more secrets to cover that secret. So imagine all the secrets to keep the original secret real. That's a lot of emotional energy.